Welcome to Riverdale, the official podcast of the critically acclaimed series on the CW. I'm your host, Bob Barth, and with me this week is writer Yolonda Lawrence. We're going to discuss her background, how she came into the Riverdale world, and of course, all the ins and outs of her episode, Chapter 3.
Archie.
Betty. Veronica.
Jughead.
I'm Cheryl Blossom.
For one shining moment, we were just kids. The bright neon lights of Pops keeping the darkness at bay.
Yolanda, thank you so much for sitting down with us. This is Yolanda Lawrence. And you are not only a writer on the show, but your official title is?
Supervising producer.
Supervising producer. So you crack the whip when necessary.
I guess.
All right. So let's talk a bit about your background. How did you get into writing?
I actually studied television writing at Syracuse University and moved out here in the early aughts and got my first gig in 2004. And I've been going ever since.
Gangbusters ever since. Yeah, some of the shows you've written on Reaper. Witches of the East End, Heartbeat, and now starting with the first season of Riverdale.
Yeah.
How do you like it so far?
I love it. It's been one of the best professional experiences I've had thus far.
Nice.
And I've worked on a lot of shows.
What was the interview process like?
Going in, well, we had two. At first, I met with Ryan Lindenberg at Greg Berlanti's company, and that went great. Had a lot in common. Had a lot of fun.
Good.
And then I met with Ryan, Sarah, and Roberto, and I just found him utterly charming and fantastic. I liked his glasses.
Nice.
He made me laugh, and I left completely obsessed with him, and called my agents immediately afterwards, like, get me on this show. Make it happen.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And so what was your background before this with Archie?
I was just the typical kid that read Archie comics. You would get them, at least when I was growing up, in the supermarket.
Yeah.
And what I liked most about the comics at the time was, I'm from Brooklyn, from New York City, and not from a bad neighborhood per se, but grew up during a time when the crack epidemic was rampant, and I just loved reading about, like, these innocent kids where people would have sort of fights with their friends, but then come back around to being friends again, and it was sort of wholesome, and it was a nice distraction for me from, like, the grit of New York City in the 80s, which was not like it is now.
No.
Yeah.
I grew up on the other side of the river in New Jersey.
Got it.
And when we would do I to this day, I still, when I come through the Lincoln Tunnel out onto 42nd Street, it still takes me a second.
Yeah.
Because it's so completely different.
So it's like, you know.
And 8th Avenue, completely different.
It's just so crazy. What part of Jersey? My mom's from Teaneck.
I was born in New York, out on Long Island, Bethpage, and then raised up in Northwest New Jersey, up, like Vernon Valley.
So that's not Bergen County, is it?
Not Bergen, Sussex County.
Okay, different.
Action Park.
Different. Got it.
Yeah. So, excellent. Another fellow East Coaster.
Yeah.
And Syracuse University too.
Yeah.
I went to Ithaca College.
Oh, not just down the road.
Dated a girl up there for a minute and
froze your ass off.
Yeah,
like I did.
Yeah. Very scary in the winter times.
Yeah, freezing in the 90s.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. So, Chapter 3, Body Double. Now, you wrote the script. At what point, now I know Roberto works out, he sits all you guys down. The room was put together, would it be August?
No, we started in late June.
Late June, okay. So he had kind of this basic season arc figured out at that point. Sort of?
He knew sort of. I mean, we worked it out together, I would say. He had what we like to call the magical document that sort of broadly talked about where he wanted to go, and then we got together and worked out like this season, this is what Archie's journey will be, and
Great.
Jughead's journey, and so on and so forth.
Oh, neat. So you did it sort of character by character.
Yeah, talked about it. Mm-hmm.
And it is like sort of doing a puzzle backwards.
Yeah.
You see with the big pictures, and then you need to kind of take it apart for each
absolutely.
episode.
So yeah, it was more generalized, and then we'd get into the weeds with each episode. Like,
that was neat.
Yeah. What does Archie want?
So did you know that you'd be doing chapter 3 early on?
No. He pulled me aside and told me, and he actually had the idea that he wanted to do a story about slut shaming, and then we as a room determined what the story would be and broke it together. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's neat. So that, and there must have been, did you feel any pressure on your end? He had written the pilot.
Oh my God.
He had written the second episode.
I wanted to vomit. It was horrible. And it was crunch time because we were block shooting 2 and 3. So I was writing while he was writing.
Right.
So the only template I had was the pilot. And because we were block shooting, I mean, my name's on the script, but we wrote it as a room together. Like
sure.
we different people took different scenes, and then I would take it and sort of smooth it out, and yeah, it was horrible. I looked crazy. People would come into my office like, "Are you okay?" Like my hair was it was bad, but got it done.
Got it done, and
Yeah.
it's really exciting chapter. So let's get into the thick of it. Chapter 3, Body Double.
Sure.
Did you pick? Now I know a lot of these titles are references to classic film, frequently noir.
Yeah.
Was Body Double your choice?
It wasn't, and I can't remember whose choice it was. I think I was going for Double Indemnity, even though it didn't
Nice.
quite make sense. I just liked the way it sounded.
Yeah.
I think maybe Roberto might have come up with this title. It's
Okay.
hard to remember. Like, that was so long ago, you know?
Oh yeah, no, I know. A lot of this is going to be a refresher
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you, as we are in the throes right now.
13.
Of filming. We're in the last couple of days of filming.
Yeah,
13.
it's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
It went
But
by fast.
Are you excited that people are listening to it right after the show's aired, but we are a couple of days before that? Are you excited to see your episode on TV?
Yeah. I mean, I got to watch it, a cut of it here in the room with our fellow team here, and that was cool. But yeah, it'll be exciting.
There
I
is
can't
something
wait.
fun when your family gets to sit and
Yeah,
watch it,
it'll be cool.
because they tell you what they really think.
Yeah, my family does especially.
So at the top of this, Cheryl, the big cliffhanger at the end of chapter 2, Cheryl puts out her wrists, and she's willing to go and be arrested.
Yeah.
Which is very dramatic.
What she says is, I'm guilty.
I'm guilty.
Yeah.
And she sits down with the police, and at the top here, she reveals that there was actually a plan between she and Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Was there, there are a lot of, throughout any kind of good noir or mysteries, there's MacGuffins as we go through it, little tricks. How much did you, without obviously getting beyond this episode, was there a conscious effort to go, we need to kind of lead the audience in a certain direction at the top of this episode?
A lot. I mean, just the phrase I'm guilty in and of itself is a MacGuffin, because she's referring to the guilt that she feels about letting him leave without asking further questions.
Right.
Which in her mind led to his death, not necessarily guilty of killing him.
Right.
So that's sort of the way that we come into the story. Tricking the audience.
Absolutely. And I don't think there'll be an episode of the podcast here where I won't mention how amazing Madeleine Petsch is.
She's amazing. But the truth is, like, the entire cast, like, these kids, they're wonderful. They're all so talented.
Mm-hmm.
They're fantastic to look at. But they're all just, and they can give you such richness and such deepness in scenes, and can play so much just on their faces without words, which is to me like the sign of a skilled actor.
They really are. And what's what I have found as we've gone through the episodes, constantly surprising, constantly going, oh, okay, Betty's going to go here. Would never have pegged that in a million years. And I feel like Madeleine surprises me in almost every scene she gets. She's able to convey so much in about 10 seconds. She's really spectacular.
Yeah, she is. And I think what's interesting about this episode in particular, it's the first time you sort of get underneath Cheryl's persona and get a hint, well, things might be a little weird at home, like her parents' reaction to her talking to the police isn't what one would think of as a normal response. And later, her reaction to realizing that Jason's name is in the book.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely
like you really
crazy.
get underneath a little bit of who Cheryl is. She's not just the bitchy girl. There's more to her. There's a depth there.
Absolutely. So after the scene with Cheryl, then Archie, our good guy Archie, lies to the police. Another big move here from a character that I guess we don't really expect.
Yeah, lie of omission.
Yeah. Lie of omission, yes.
He's just, he's trying now, and in his Archie way, that's a hallmark of who Archie is, even going back to the comics. Like, he's always trying to do the right thing, and he's got several masters here that he needs to serve. And he wants to make sure that he can help the police, but also keep Miss Grundy, a woman that he's grown to care about, safe. So he's walking a fine gray line there.
Walking a very fine line. How did you feel about the teacher-student storyline? Because it's sensitive.
Yeah, it's
right?
sensitive. But it's happening. It's in the news, and I just read recently about a teacher that got pregnant by like a 13-year-old student of hers, and then decided not to have the baby only so that she wouldn't go to jail for as long as the prosecutors wanted her to go. So this happens.
Yeah.
We want to keep things real and grounded.
Absolutely.
So
okay, so after that, Veronica, she reveals she has a date with Chuck.
Yeah, bad boy Chuck.
Bad boy Chuck. Jughead and Betty start at the paper. And Fred finds Archie in another lie.
Yeah.
This is really every time Luke Perry is on screen as Fred Andrews, he adds it is such a grounded scene. It really puts everything in perspective. Yeah, and he has a very surprise. I mean, I grew up with 90210.
As did I.
Right? Okay. High school. It was high school era for me. And to see the grown-up Luke Perry who has this the resonance in his voice.
Yeah.
And the disappointment.
Yeah.
That he has in Archie, who has, as we discover, sort of up to this point, been a really great kid.
Right. And still is. Just growing and still trying to figure it out. And, it's that thing that happens with parents and with kids when you're teens and you're individuating and you're stepping outside of your parents' shadow. And sometimes that's not pretty. And sometimes you're not honest. And, at the same time, kids are realizing that parents aren't perfect. So it's an interesting time.
It really is, and it's throughout the entire series that having the parents there as another not obstacle necessary, but sounding board and an area of conflict for these kids is really great.
Yeah.
And there is a thing that happens. I remember it happening to me probably around the high school age too, where you stop looking like idolizing your parents, and you start to see the cracks in the surface, right?
Yeah.
And we discover that. We will continue to discover that throughout the series.
Yeah.
After that, we have Miss Grundy freaks out on Archie.
Well, wouldn't you?
Well, he does. He says when he's with the police, though, it wasn't just that. I was just thinking about this. It wasn't just an omission. He says he was at the lake with Vegas.
Yeah.
Throwing the dog under the bus.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he omits her from the story.
He omits her from the story. Yes, she not happy that we're involving the police.
Well, this is the price you pay when you have a relationship with a 16-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Not the most reliable.
No, not at all. So, and then we have the fallout. One of the big postmarks on this episode, the big fallout of the date with Chuck. Yes. Sticky Maple. All right.
Yeah.
But
the thing
origin?
to remember, like, what's interesting is, can we back up a bit? Like,
sure.
prior to the Sticky Maple, it's the first time that we've gotten to see Veronica vulnerable.
Yes.
She talks about how much she misses New York and how hard it is to be the new kid and start over.
Yep.
And sort of lets Chuck in a bit. Sort of taking away the Veronica mask.
Yeah.
And which then makes the Sticky Maple of it all even more devastating.
Totally.
Because if you're Veronica, you feel stupid you let this guy in.
Right.
And he took advantage of your kindness and used it against you and lied. So now it's on, and he must be destroyed.
Yeah, and it's a great point. I mean, Veronica feels very vulnerable in that date, and Chuck, not beyond being extraordinarily attractive young man.
Yeah, pretty hot.
He knows how to put her in a position where she can feel like she can let her guard down.
Yeah, classic manipulator.
Yeah, he knows he's knows what it is to be the new kid, or knows what it is to be the outsider.
Yeah,
and plays that card.
Yeah.
Amazingly well.
Yeah.
Where did the origin?
Dude, we had so many names up on boards. We had like the staff writers go off and it's like, you guys come up with stuff, and they come up with a bunch. And I think ultimately it might have been James, one of our staff writers.
Okay.
Who ultimately came up with the title. We had like 50 different.
All of them ridiculously filthy.
Yeah, but it's like you have to, it's that fine line that you're walking.
Yeah.
Because it needs to suggest something, but it can't be.
Can't be nuts.
Exactly.
And it also has to be obscure enough that you won't get some unwanted phone calls.
I mean, originally we wanted it to say, flat out, necklace, but you can't do that. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's
still network, not cable.
Still network, and I have to say, when it came across our desk, I consider myself one of the kids. I'm certainly not one of the kids. I was like, I have no idea what that is, and of course we had to look it up, and it's horrifying.
Yeah,
it's absolutely horrifying. Yeah. But so Veronica freaks out. She confronts Chuck in the locker room
with Betty in tow.
As she's shielding her eyes,
yes,
hysterically.
Favorite line: "Tell yourself it's an Abercrombie and Fitch catalog." Love it.
That was great. Yeah, and it's a perfect throwaway line too.
Yeah.
And Veronica is fearless. This is the girl that we are first introduced to, and she's not. And you're right. I mean, she goes in with the fire of someone who's been scorned after having let her guard down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great scene. After that, Jughead questions Dilton Doily.
Oh, Dilton.
Oh, Dilton.
You wackaloon.
Perfect. Again, another perfectly cast young man.
Yeah.
This guy is Dilton Doily from 100 miles away.
But it also just like sort of speaks to what's so great about Roberto and his vision, and he can make sort of scouting subversive. This innocent, very sort of quintessential Americana thing, into something subversive and weird. Yeah, which is cool.
So Doily says he found Cheryl down by the river.
Mm-hmm.
So there's questions there. After that, Cheryl talks to Archie and is willing to make the connection between him and Josie. He's been working on his music. In chapter 2, he goes to, actually it's the pilot, right? He goes to Josie and for help with the music, and she says, take a hike. We're the Pussycats. We've worked hard to get here.
Yeah, not so much. Was it help, or did he? I can't remember exactly what the ask was, but I remember she says something along the lines like, "Read my heavily glossed lips," or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the thing to keep in mind here with Cheryl, she's coming to Archie because she feels as though she owes him a debt,
Right.
because he came forward on her behalf, and again we get to see like little cracks in her armor and see a little bit of the vulnerability, but still very much in a Cheryl way.
Definitely.
And it's an interesting tidbit that Cheryl and Josie are friends. Like that's new info for the audience, and it's cool.
It is cool. I guess we only sort of get a glimpse of that at the pep rally at the end when they do their little hug and duet together.
Yeah.
But very exciting. And then, for everyone who's a Riverdale fan who previously is a Stranger Things fan, Barb shows up.
We love, but on our show now she's Ethel.
Ethel Muggs.
And she's awesome.
She is.
And really is an interesting sort of way in, I think, for the audience to see, how deep things run with this terrible book and this small group of athletes slut shaming girls at the school. And when you hear Ethel's story, though it makes you chuckle because the language is a little interesting, but it's heartbreaking.
It is.
It's heartbreaking.
It is, and it's so I hate to say typical, but it's sort of this mean-spirited thing that goes on in schools between the sexes, and to kind of equate it to winning or losing a game or marks up in a book.
It speaks to a larger issue in our culture in terms of like what we're teaching our boys. About sexism and misogyny and frankly consent. So
and so at that point all of the girls learn about this playbook, and we start devising a plan. Meanwhile, Jughead has he has a little interrogation of another scout who reveals that the gunshot down by the lake was actually Dilton doing a little target practice, teaching the scouts to be survivalists, as if when it's the end of the world.
You never know.
You never know.
Can we back up?
Yeah, of course.
For a bit. So what I particularly like about that scene where it's sort of like girl power and they decide, it's also Veronica sort of approaching Cheryl, who's dismissive of it. And what I particularly like about that scene is it's sort of a window into how we as women at times can have our own internalized sexism and our own internalized misogyny, because Cheryl, is her first instinct is to side with the boys. Boys will be boys,
right?
And it's only when Veronica points out to her that it's not acceptable and it's not right that it gets Cheryl to start thinking a little differently. We don't see that until the B-side, but we'll find out later that that's what that was about.
Absolutely. Archie sneaks out to go work with Josie and the Pussycats.
Oh, bad Archie.
I know. Archie has just been told by his loving father, knock it off. Can't help it. And then, the girls get together, and Cheryl surprises the gang by really becoming one of the girls.
Yes.
So, and Cheryl has this amazing way.
And fantastic thigh-high boots.
Fantastic thigh-high boots. The high fashion, Cheryl's high fashion is fantastic throughout and amazing. Yeah. And wardrobe is just knocking it out of the park. Yeah. But Cheryl has this great way and she does it probably in every episode, of alienating us and alienating the characters around her.
Yeah.
Then we fall in love with her again. Yeah. She's part of the group. And then 2 scenes later, she's doing the same thing again.
Yeah. But it's also like you're introduced there to several things in that scene. Betty's heartbreak about seeing her sister's name in the book and how devastating that is for her, and Cheryl's heartbreak about seeing her brother's name in the book and realizing that this boy that she's held to such high esteem, her literal other half, is not someone that she knew, perhaps. And what does that mean?
Yeah, and she's shocked, as we are.
Yeah.
We're shocked that Jason's in this book, because even though we have scant amount of information about Jason at this point, what he's been painted for us is just not one of those sort of aggressive, masculine.
Though, I mean, I don't know about that, because we get hints of it when we talk about, in the pilot, when we talk a little bit about Polly and her brokenness, and it's a question as to whether or not that was fully Jason, fully Alice. Like, there's sort of hints that he might not be, at least as far as the Coopers are concerned.
That's just it. I mean, my looking at it was always that the parents love to pin the other parents' kids.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? So when I'm looking at it, I'm hearing, well, it's probably, it's not Jason, but he's the easiest one that you can point out. It's not my kid, it's your kid.
Right.
Because again, when in our flashback scenes, Jason is very gentle.
Right.
Granted, it's through the eyes of Cheryl.
Right.
But he's a very gentle, like, nice guy.
Right.
You never hear anyone say anything cross about him. In fact, this scene is the first time we've learned anything that might be
untoward a bit.
Untoward,
yeah.
So, and then Betty learns about Jason, and it's like one more thing that has happened to her sister.
Yeah.
And she snaps.
Yeah.
A little.
Yeah.
She's out for revenge.
Yeah.
Right.
She's a good sister.
She is a good...
She loves her sister.
Good sister. Our next scene, Archie is with the Pussycats, and he's going to try to prove himself.
Yeah.
Even
in the wrong way. Oh, Archie.
In the wrong way?
Oh, Archie.
So, how do you mean in the wrong way?
So, isn't this the scene where... Is this the scene where he first comes in and Valerie talks about... He talks to each of them like, Valerie, you're the songwriter, and... Is that scene, or might be confusing it with a later scene where Josie basically tells him to simmer down?
Yeah, not yet. This is basically, he sits down, she's reticent to let him even be in the room.
Right.
But she's doing it as a favor for Cheryl. And he's contributing a little bit.
Yeah.
And much to really Josie's surprise, his contributions actually aren't that bad.
Right.
And his song isn't actually that bad.
Right.
So Josie's seeing him in a different light.
Yeah.
And he's sort of starting to feel, for the first time, this is the first peer, really.
Right, sort of validated a
bit. That's validating his work, Okay, now we're going to come on a scene that is absolutely one of my favorites.
Go.
This is Alice Cooper and the lipstick smear.
Okay. Is Machen the best? She's
amazing.
Well, and what's odd for me is I worked with her, little background, on Witches.
Oh, really? Okay, right.
Yeah, so
makes sense.
I sort of, in as much as one knows an actor that you work with, had experience working with her, and she was such a different character on that show. Like, she can just do anything.
Yeah.
She can just do anything.
And she's very... I think of her in the same way that I think about Cheryl, where we're given sort of a version of Alice that winds up surprising us.
Yeah.
But then, boy, she knows how to bring the hammer down. She can be so intimidating.
Yeah.
And this really sort of messy and aggressive, grabbing her daughter by the head and, wiping the lipstick off. It's humiliating. It's heartbreaking. And it's almost the last straw for Betty.
It is. But what Alice does in that scene, in a weird way, comes from a loving place, if that makes sense at all. I mean, insofar as like Alice doesn't know how to express love in a normal way, but she has a line in that scene where she says something along the lines of like, "Don't grow up too fast. Your sister grew up too fast."
Yeah.
So she basically sees Betty with this lipstick on, and it's like watching your kid from Alice's standpoint step in front of a moving train, and you're trying to quickly move them off the tracks before they get hurt.
Absolutely.
And for Alice, that's a lipstick smear.
Yeah.
For most other parents, it would be a talking to and a treating them like an equal. But in Alice's world, that's how it manifests.
Yeah, and when we come to Riverdale, all of our lead kids, characters, are really, we're finding them as sort of pivotal moments in their lives.
Yeah.
Each one of them is doing something different for the first time.
Yeah.
And I feel we're sort of at the precipice of that with Betty, where she's sort of taking charge of her life.
Yeah.
And in the face of her mom.
Yeah.
And her mom does not like that.
She doesn't like it, and because Betty is on the precipice, if you're from Alice's standpoint, she sees this and the changes that Betty's made in the first 3 episodes, and the source of that change is Veronica.
That's right.
There's before Veronica and after Veronica. And before Veronica, she can control her.
Right.
And now she's losing a bit of a grip on her. And so she endeavors to do whatever she can to sever this growing relationship that's a threat.
Totally. And all we know about we have only heard about Polly. So there's still an element of Polly to the audience that's quite a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
And so we can only imagine, based on how Alice speaks about her, what kind of a monster Polly is.
Right.
But it's just a great scene. Then Betty sets up Chuck. Betty gets all made up, goes to Pop's diner.
It's just such a great scene.
She's great.
Yeah.
She's great. And she's taken the bull by the horns, so to speak.
Yeah.
And Chuck is, as most guys are and would be in this scenario, easily duped. Because you would think, even if Chuck goes, well, this seems really out of character, something's probably up. There's that thing that happens with 16-year-old boys where logic goes out the window.
And 26, and 36, and 46.
Yeah.
Hot blonde in cute sweater.
Yeah.
Sits across from you with bright red lips and says that she'd like your help with loosening up a bit.
Yeah.
You're not going to say no to that.
No, you're not. You know it's a setup. You see the setup coming a million miles away, and then you're like, well, I'm going to see what this is.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. I also just love, like, the way Lily in particular plays that scene. Like, there are flashes there when he makes a reference to Polly.
Yeah.
Of hurt and of confusion and of anger, and then immediately the wall goes right back up.
Yeah.
Because she's got a part to play.
Yeah.
With Chuck, and it's such a brilliant bit of acting. It's not a very long scene.
Absolutely.
But I think she plays so many emotions.
Yeah.
In that short scene that it's just wonderful to watch.
Yeah, and she also is. This is a combination of great acting, great direction.
Oh yeah, Lee.
Who did?
Oh my God.
Who did the pilot?
The second episode.
2 and 3 that were filmed at the same time, and our finale.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
Lee Tolan-Krieger has been just stellar on the show. But to say, okay, Betty, you're going into this scene. This is what needs to happen. You need to convince this boy. But it's not just that. She's just not flipping a switch and she's this totally different. She's still Betty.
Right.
So Betty's going to struggle with that. And you see that. Lily is not 100%, or Betty is not 100% comfortable with the persona or any aspect of this. But she's trying hard enough and it works.
Yeah. and kudos to the kid that plays Chuck, because man, does he play skeevy well.
Yeah, absolutely. And he just gets worse and worse and worse. So after that, Archie sneaks back into the house after his work with Josie, caught by Fred.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, again, how many times are you going to disappoint your dad?
Yeah.
And he's just broken every time.
Yes, but it's like if you're Archie and this summer was significant for him because he realized how important music is. And so it's that teenage thing that happens when you haven't yet figured out how to calibrate emotions, and so you feel things in a very heightened way. It's either super sad or super happy, and like music is super, super important to him.
Yeah.
Got to sneak out.
Absolutely. And the point that he has with his dad, and it's the first time where Archie, you do get the feeling that he feels bad that he constantly is disappointing his dad. But the truth in the scene is that he's not wrong. He makes the point that, look, if you're taking away this opportunity for me to perform, if this was football and I had the big game, you probably wouldn't stop me from playing the game because other people are relying on me. And then other people are relying on me for this performance as well.
Yeah.
And
it is a legitimate argument.
Absolutely.
But with that said, which is what makes the scene, I think, so powerful and interesting, Fred has a good point too, which is we're not here to litigate my behavior. The fact of the matter is, I told you as your father and the man that pays the bills in this house can't go out. You went out.
Yeah. There are very specific
rules.
No, I know. I'm a parent myself.
So you get it.
And I remember being the kid.
Yeah.
And I know now that I have a child.
Yeah.
It is great to wield with an iron fist.
Sometimes you gotta draw the line. Sometimes you gotta do it. Yeah.
Even for Archie. So then we're now going to move to another huge moment in this show, probably the biggest, the hot tub scene.
Oh my God. Okay. I wasn't there when they filmed that. That was Roberta was there covering set, and I'm so sad that I missed it. Those girls, first of all, look so gorgeous.
They look great.
I could not do that in front of a crew. Like, so confident, so beautiful. And for as outsized as the response was from Betty and Veronica, in terms of like the average teenage girl obviously wouldn't respond in that way in order to get revenge, it also managed to be oddly very grounded.
Yeah.
And rooted in something real. I mean, because there's the earlier scene where, I can't remember which act it's in, where Veronica's looking at her phone and looking at the comments that people are making in reference to the sticky maple. Like this wounded her deeply, and that's what the anger comes from. And we know, obviously, that Betty's anger is rooted in, it's twofold. It's about her sister, and it's also about Veronica, this new friend of hers, that she feels as though she needs to defend. And what makes it like a very Riverdale tale,
Right.
Betty's wig, like what
on? Where did it come from? Yeah, seriously, because she makes this comment, I think in chapter 2, about my room is so pink, everything's so pink. Where did this wig come from, Betty?
Yeah.
And she owns it. She
Big time.
full on owns it, and she comes out, and the farther she gets into the scene, the bigger she becomes, the more of a force she becomes, and they get chucked right where they want them.
Right where they want them. That's every girl's sort of like fantasy about getting back at an evil slut-shaming ass.
Totally.
And he deserves all that he gets.
And then Betty snaps. How do you feel about that scene? How was that worked out in the room?
The brilliant mind of Roberto, Aguirre Sacasa, always knew that he wanted her to snap. Always had in mind that he wanted that wig. It's just that, Betty, we see what she does with her nails into her hands.
Right.
It's essentially a form of self-harm. I mean, she's so tightly wound, and she's got so many demons that she's battling with while she's trying to keep up the persona of the perfect girl, of the girl next door. And that is, a top that's under pressure, and eventually, like, the steam will come out and the top's gonna pop.
That's right.
So
yeah, it's wild, and she sort of takes on the persona of her sister a bit, and it becomes very much about Polly and Jason. And there's lots of questions.
Well, it's also just like she's coming into this too, and without spoiling,
sure,
she also still has so many questions about that relationship that no one in her life will answer for her.
That's right.
And so Chuck, in a weird way, becomes a interesting proxy.
Yep.
For all of her frustrations about her sister and her concerns about her sister, and speaks to a larger issue about the family dynamic, the Cooper family dynamic.
Yeah, it's a wild scene.
Yeah. I mean, you see the look on Veronica's face when she walks out with the wig. Camila played that like so beautifully. Yeah, it's like a genuine shock.
And Veronica, when even back to reading the comic books, Veronica's always been that character that's sort of means business and steadfast and not easily surprised.
Yeah.
So when she's totally surprised, as we all are, this is just Betty completely out of character.
Yeah.
And this is what happens when you're pushed too far.
Yeah. And just like another, like, back to the acting, great performance by Camila, and just gives Veronica so many layers. There's so much more to this girl than just the rich girl with a Birkin bag walking up the halls of, Riverdale High. So much underneath that.
Absolutely. So on the flip side, we're going to go see Archie and the gang and the parents, many of the parents, over at the Taste of Riverdale.
Yeah.
We got the big slap.
Yeah. Well, I love like these events when we have them, because so many different things go on. So at the Taste of Riverdale, we've got not just the slap, Penelope slapping Alice, which Alice deserves. We've got Fred kind of sort of asking Hermione out on a date.
Yeah, there's definitely a flirtation.
We've got Alice going after Hermione a little bit and sort of taking the energy from the slap, like putting it onto Hermione and talking about what's going on with Veronica at school.
And really, I don't want your daughter messing around with mine.
And we've got, which is super juicy, Fred turning to Miss Grundy and saying, I'd love to talk with you. And that dun-dun-dun moment, we're not sure, like, has he figured it out? What's that about? And
or is he interested himself?
Yeah.
That she's certainly crossed my mind.
Cute lady. Very cute lady. And Jughead and Archie coming together, like, their friendship is continuing to heal, which is a sweet moment. And Jughead questioning Dilton. And the best part of, and you're right, it's so many moving pieces in one scene, on top of Josie and the Pussycats playing great performance,
playing Archie's song, and it's a great performance. Yeah. So it functions so well. We get so much information within a relatively short period of time, and none of it feels like exposition. It's really coming at us in a really fluid, organic way. So congratulations.
And can I just thank you? And can I just say that day was an insane day. Our like twinkle lights blew out.
Oh no.
Machen's daughter was on set to watch her mom get slapped, which was cool. Cool kid, cool daughter.
Probably, I imagine she's probably seen a lot.
Oh my God! Wow, she's lovely. And what else happened? There was a couple of really interesting. Being in that balcony, like I could barely stand up. I'm a tall girl, and it was like super strange. The Taste of Riverdale. That was an interesting day.
That was great, and we going through the footage of all of the slaps was amazing.
There was a point at one take I thought for sure that she'd made contact with Machen's face. It seemed so real. Obviously that's not what occurred.
Right.
But like they both played it so well. Like,
So well.
Machen like would reel back, and it's like, whoa, is everything okay? And she's just both such pros.
There was one that we saw where it looks like she literally took her up off her feet.
Yeah.
I was like, this is amazing.
Such pros, like
Yeah.
such pros. Those ladies.
And it's just a great, powerful scene. So after all this, Fred has this sort of the core of the conversation with Grundy is, look, my son is putting kind of everything on the line
Yeah.
for this music.
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Yeah.
And she says, yeah.
Yeah.
And so at the end, once again, Fred Andrews is the best dad that's ever
No,
lived.
but don't you feel for him so much in that moment? Because it's like, I'm sure it's something, I know a conversation that I had with my parents. It's like, so we educated you and you want to go do what?
Oh my gosh.
Like, not the lawyer doctor route that everyone else in this family does? Like, what?
Yeah.
What? And like, but you could go there and fail? Yeah,
Yeah.
I could.
Yeah, no parent wants
you don't
their
want that.
child to be an artist.
You want stability for your kid, and you
Exactly.
want, stability equals happiness for parents for the most part, and
struggle is, it's just the entire this business is a struggle,
Yeah.
and it's extraordinarily difficult to see that on your loved ones, especially when you're someone who's gone through it to a degree yourself.
Yeah.
So it's a very authentic moment,
Yeah.
but. Like I said, Fred is the most amazing parent in the world.
Yes.
Leans right into this music.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's soundproofing the garage
That's
for
the
Archie.
best. And it's like, as an audience member, that's so awesome. And it's like, and also KJ, so brilliant, such an amazing singer.
Yes.
And so much presence. Like, you're rooting for Archie and his music. You're just rooting for him.
Absolutely. And the look of joy on his face when he sees his dad accept that this is who Archie is now.
Yeah. It's great. But
Yeah.
then it's immediately undercut with I talk to your teacher. The look on KJ's face.
About what? What are you talking about?
Oh my God.
Because the only thing you have going for you, the fact is that your dad's doing something nice for you.
Yeah.
So chances are.
Yeah, just keeping it a Riverdale story, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Always subversive.
After that, the story hits the school newspaper, the Blue and Gold. And Veronica confronts Betty about her actions. Veronica asks Betty, "What's going on with the whole transfer of identity?"
Yeah, and Betty genuinely doesn't remember the crazier parts of it.
Yeah, or I even reviewing it again recently before we sat down. It's hard to tell whether or not she's lying, or if she doesn't totally get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth.
Yeah.
Like, I go back and forth, which is like the brilliance
That's
of the
the
acting
point.
and brilliance of the scene. Just that there's a lot going on beneath the surface with all these kids, beneath the surface with Jughead, and
Yep,
I think
absolutely.
Cole just gives us so many layers. He's more than just a dark, broody kid with a crown hat.
He is, and the thing that Cole does, and you see it a bit in this episode. I think up in the balcony you see it, because Jughead is presented as such a when we first meet him, kind of a moody, introverted guy. Anytime he smiles, your heart just melts.
Yeah, for
It's like,
sure.
oh man, Jughead.
Yeah.
And then Chuck, cut from the team.
And the school, right?
And the school. Well, and we are told in VO by Jughead that this will have a ripple effect. Very
Can't
exciting.
get into it.
Can't get into it. The CW shut this down.
Don't poke the bear.
I won't. But it's like, what?
Yeah.
And again, another episode ends where you're like, what? What is happening?
Yeah.
I really think this at the end of this episode, this meeting that Betty and Veronica have together, this hot tub sequence, this thing that they've been through, seals their friendship.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a line in the VO that says, like, they've been forged. And, from this point forward, they are besties. Obviously, Betty's best friend her whole life is Archie, but her best girlfriend is Veronica. And that's what I love most about this episode and this story in particular, is that it's about female friendships and female sisterhood. And I do feel as though it's in your high school and college years that as a young woman you learn to lean on other females and learn the benefits of female friendship and female sisterhood, and how important that is.
Yeah. And that you're right, you do need to have that, at least one person that you can totally be open with and honest with and rely on.
Yeah.
And to discover that person is in your life is exciting.
Yeah. And there's a little sort of like a bit of a thaw with Cheryl too, and then Cheryl and Betty, and
burning the book.
These things will pay off in interesting ways.
Another great sequence with the little lighter fluid and the book and the can.
Ethel gets her justice.
And then of course the last little bit here, Dilton reveals that down at the lake, after he's being questioned about the gunshot, he saw Mrs. Grundy's car.
Yeah. Archie.
Yolanda, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Sure.
Chapter 3 is marvelous. You have a lot to be proud of.
Thank you.
And
we all do. It was a group effort.
It is a group effort, as these things come to be. Thank you all for listening to Welcome to Riverdale. Remember, this can be found on YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts are found. Until next week, take care, guys. Bye.
Hey, Riverdale, we are Josie and the Pussycats.
Paintings on her skin, colors in her hair. Come around the corner, make you stop and stare. But she don't pay no mind, 'cause she don't really care what you think about her, think about her. I don't care what you want me to be, 'cause it ain't for you, no, it's all for me. People say they try to help, but they don't know a story, they just try to sell a cookie cutter recipe for living well, but they don't take the time to stop and listen. Covering her ears, she pushes on alone, 'cause she don't need nobody else to let her know how to go about living or where she should go. And if you try to slow her down, she'll scream. I don't care what you want me to be, 'cause it ain't for you, no, it's all for me.
Rick, move your head.